Welcome to While We Were Distracted, the podcast where we explore topics that often get overshadowed in the rush of daily life.
Today, we are opening a file that, it sounds completely fabricated, like a lost script from some old spy movie.
It really does. But we promise you, this is all absolutely real.
Documented history. Here's the fact we're starting with. The Central Intelligence Agency hired America's most respected stage magician, a conjurer named John Mulholland, to write a classified manual.
It just sounds absurd, but it happened. And our mission today is to take a deep dive into the historical documents that reveal this fascinating and deeply covert operation.
What happens when the world of espionage meets the art of, well, close-up deception?
Mulholland wrote this highly secret manual to teach field officers how to use magicians' craft sleight of hand, pure misdirection in their clandestine ops.
Specifically for the undetectable delivery of chemical substances.
Exactly.
We are drawing our facts directly from the declassified material, specifically from excerpts of the official CIA Manual of Trickery and Deception.
It's an incredible window into a really bizarre moment in intelligence history.
And for those of you who want to see the original diagrams and text for yourselves, the full PDF is available for download in the description.
Okay, so to understand why the CIA would ever need a professional magician, you have to go back to the context of the early Cold War.
Right.
The origins of this manual are rooted in the CIA's most, controversial and unethical research program, Project MKUltra.
That name is just synonymous with the darkest corners of the agency's history.
It is. MKUltra was born from this profound, almost existential anxiety after the Korean War.
Brainwashing.
Yes, the brainwashing of captured American soldiers. The CIA genuinely feared that the Soviet Union, China, and North Korea were close to, and this is a quote, mastering the art of mind control.
And that fear drove everything.
It drove their feverish and ultimately destructive efforts in behavioral modification.
So the thinking was, if the enemy can control our minds, we have to figure out how to control theirs, or at least incapacitate them.
Precisely. And the man driving this was Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, the chief of the CIA's Technical Services Division, or TSS.
The TSS was basically the agency's Q branch, right? The gadget guys.
Absolutely. They were the high-tech espionage specialists, forging documents, building tiny microphones, designing all kinds of concealments. They practically lived by Arthur C. Clarke's law. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
And their inventory was certainly advanced. And terrifying. What kind of chemical tools were they actually working with under MKUltra?
The sources confirm a pretty significant chemical arsenal. We're talking 8 different lethal substances and 27 temporary incapacitating agents.
27?
Yeah. And the research was into some really exotic stuff. Shellfish toxins, cobra venom, botulinum. They even looked into preparations made from crocodile bile.
Wow, it sounds like they were just trying anything and everything.
They were throwing everything at the wall to see what stuck. But, having a terrifying chemical on a shelf in a lab doesn't do you any good in the field.
Right, you have to be able to deliver it.
And their early delivery systems were, frankly, pretty crude. You hear about things like hypodermic syringes hidden inside modified Papermate pens.
The Castro assassination attempt.
That's the one. Or like a hollowed-out toothpaste tube used to hide a tiny firing device. Gottlieb realized something critical. All these potent chemicals were, in his words, operationally useless, unless an officer could administer them secretly, right under a target's nose.
And that is the gap. That's where John Mulholland comes in.
Exactly. He wasn't there to teach stage magic. He was there to solve the subtlety problem.
How much did they pay him for this?
The contract was for $3,000 in 1953. Pretty considerable sum back then.
And this was formalized as MKUltra Subproject Number 4.
That's right. His mission was crystal clear. Develop a manual teaching officers how to surreptitiously place a pill or other substance in drink or food to be consumed by a target.
The secrecy around it was intense, even for the CIA.
Oh, absolutely. Mulholland had a formal secrecy agreement. Gottlieb used an alias Sherman C. Grifford, and even the language in the manual was sanitized.
Spies were performers.
And covert acts were just tricks. And you have to give him credit, Mulholland took it to his grave. He died in 1970 and never revealed a thing.
So, to succeed, he had to break down the psychology of magic.
Yes. And apply it to an audience that doesn't even know it's an audience. And what's really fascinating is he taught the officers that the spy actually has a huge advantage over the stage magician.
How so? I would think it's the opposite.
Well, a magician's audience expects to be deceived, but they can only really focus on one thing at a time. The spy's audience the target, is completely unsuspecting. They're not looking for a trick at all.
Which means the officer can control their entire mental landscape.
Exactly.
Okay, but what about the physical act? I mean, we've all heard the hand is quicker than the eye.
Mulholland called that a dangerous belief, a total myth. He taught that quickness is your enemy because the human eye can register movement at 1/1000th of a second.
Faster than any hand can move.
Way faster. If you move quickly, you draw attention. The core principle he taught was this: an illusion is primarily mental, not visual. You don't fool the eyes, you fool the mind.
So the mind tells the eyes what they saw, or what they should have seen.
That's it, psychological camouflage.
So how do you build that camouflage? What are the rules?
Mulholland laid out two primary laws. The first is naturalness. Every single action must appear natural and innocent. No awkward movements, no fidgeting, no hesitation. The act has to look like something you do all the time without even thinking about it.
Like if you look nervous reaching for your wallet, they notice. If you look bored doing it, they don't.
Precisely. The second law is misdirection, which he called the cover action.
Ah, the classic magician's tool.
Right. And the rule is simple. A larger action covers a smaller action. The larger action is the distraction, lighting a cigarette, pointing at a map, asking a question, that occupies the target's focus, while the smaller covert action happens unseen.
This is where we get into the really chilling practical mechanics from the manual. Let's start with pills, the famous matchbook trick.
Yes, this is a perfect exercise in applied misdirection. It was designed for small pills up to about 2.5 millimeters.
And it all starts with affixing the pill to the back of a paper matchbook.
Using gum Arabic paste, specifically. It dries clear, it's not sticky, and it allows for a clean, instant release.
Okay, so walk us through the routine. The target is about to light a cigarette.
The performer, the officer, pulls out the prepared matchbook. The dominant hand performs the larger action, striking the match, bringing the flame up towards the target. All eyes are on the flame.
Naturally.
And while the target is focused on the light, on the simple task of lighting their cigarette, the non-dominant hand holding the packet does the covert work. As the performer leans back, that hand passes over the target's drink.
And just lets the pill drop.
A simple flick of the thumb. The target's brain just registers the arm moving away after doing its job. It doesn't process the tiny, silent drop because its focus is already elsewhere.
It's genius. And what if the target didn't smoke?
Same principle, different object. The pill could be on the back of a coin, dropped when you're checking for change, or on a wallet, released when you pull out a business card. The key was never to use a normal object in a suspicious way.
Okay, so that's solids. Powders must have been a whole different challenge. You need a container.
A container that doesn't look like a container. Their solution was the common wooden pencil.
A pencil? How do you hide anything in a pencil?
Meticulous modification. You take off the eraser, drill out the center of the pencil, maybe up to 2 inches deep. Then you sand down the eraser itself and use it as a little stopper.
But the crucial part is the pencil has to look worthless.
Exactly. It had to be a 4 or 5 inch stump. Looks like it's been used and sharpened 100 times. No one would ever want to pick it up.
So the officer has this loaded pencil stump. How do they actually get the powder out?
This is where it gets really clever. They use substitution. First, the officer takes out a duplicate normal pencil to, say, draw a quick map on a napkin.
A completely innocent action.
Right. Then he puts that pencil away, pulls out the loaded one, and starts using it to point at details on the drawing.
And the pointing, that's the larger action.
That's the misdirection. While the target is leaning in, looking at the napkin, the officer holds the pencil over the drink, gives the eraser a slight twist with his other hand, and gravity does the rest. Powder falls out.
And then he immediately swaps the pencils again.
Instantly. So if the target suddenly reached for the pencil, the officer is holding the clean one. It's that magician's redundancy built into spycraft.
Okay, finally, liquids. How do they handle those?
For small amounts, they use these tiny, flexible polyethylene tubes. They were sealed with just a pinhole, so surface tension held the liquid in until you squeezed it.
And where would you hide something like that?
Inside a matchbook.
Yeah.
Replacing a few of the matches, or just palm between the thumb and first finger.
So the delivery relies on, what, talking with your hands?
Pretty much. The officer uses a broad hand gesture to emphasize a point in conversation. As their hand naturally sweeps over the table, it passes over the target's drink. In that split second, a quick squeeze ejects a fine stream of liquid. The brain just sees a hand gesture, not the mechanical action.
And for larger amounts.
They needed something more rigid to control the flow. They'd use a small vial hidden inside a cigarette pack.
How did that work?
A tiny hole was drilled in the bottom of the pack and the vial. A little cork with a thread attached acted as an air vent. The officer holds the pack, looking like he's about to offer a smoke.
The ultimate natural cover.
Right. And with a fingertip, he pulls the tiny thread. That removes the cork, lets air in, and the liquid drains out the bottom by gravity. The manual says 5 cc takes about 1¼ seconds to drain.
Huh.
It's fast, silent, and completely hidden by a mundane object.
It's just remarkable, the level of engineering that went into making an act of chemical warfare look like a casual fidget. So how did this philosophy of deception expand beyond just, spiking a drink?
It influenced everything. Mulholland's principles were applied to any clandestine operation that needed misdirection. Surveillance evasion, identity transfers. It was all about managing the stage.
How would you manage the stage for surveillance?
In a hostile city like Moscow, CIA officers would establish these incredibly rigid, unvarying, even boring commute patterns. Day after day, the same route, the same time.
The ultimate cover action.
Exactly. It was done to lull the KGB surveillance teams. So when the officer did deviate for just a few seconds, a quick turn, ducking into a crowded store to service a dead drop, the KGB's minds would rationalize it.
They just assume he got stuck behind a bus or something mundane.
Yes, rather than suspect a covert act. We also see it in what was called identity transfer.
The classic escape from surveillance.
The goal was to go black, to get free. The famous example is, on a dark Moscow street, the officer's car hits a blind spot for the trailing KGB car. In that moment, the officer jumps out, and a dummy figure, maybe just a briefcase and a hat on the seat, is put in his place.
So when the KGB car rounds the corner, they still see two silhouettes in the car ahead.
The illusion is maintained. The spy is gone. It's a high-stakes substitution trick.
And finally, concealment devices. The dope coin.
The dope coin is a classic. A modified silver dollar, precisely machined with a hidden cavity for microdots or powder. Or you have the Mokana shoe with a hollowed-out heel for escape tools.
The magician's insight there being that the best hiding place is one that's always in plain sight.
But one that an observer instinctively ignores because it serves a known, harmless purpose. Your shoe is just a shoe until it isn't.
This whole deep dive, it just shows that the link between MKUltra's goals and the art of deception wasn't about fantasy. It was meticulous, practical engineering focused entirely on human psychology.
Right. The CIA realized that the ultimate form of control wasn't the chemical. It was the ability to deliver it or perform any secret act completely undetected.
Right under someone's nose.
The entire manual's philosophy comes down to this idea of naturalness, making the lie look like a minor automatic action. And if the best deception requires eliminating any sign of concentration, it raises a profound question for you, the listener.
Which is?
How often do we, as ordinary observers, miss critical moments of deception simply because we instinctively trust any action that looks completely mundane and effortless? It forces you to think about which natural actions you overlook every single day and how easily that trust could be exploited.
A truly chilling thought about the power of the mundane. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the CIA's Manual of Deception. Remember, the full source PDF is linked below. We'll see you next time.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for the next episode on While We Were Distracted.